Today is Saturday, February 15th. So I just had a dream, and while this one wasn't necessarily a rapture dream, like the rapture didn't happen in this, and I never specifically had this feeling of it being about to happen. But a lot of the major themes and concepts in this dream feel really specific and very much like end time stuff. It's gonna be a little weird, a little different, so bear with me here. I was with my sister and her husband, and we went to this indoor amusement park thing in New York City. It was in this like big tall building, like a 13 floor building. So I went with them and we got tickets that only last for a couple hours, although we were really there for like at least half a day. I ended up just going around exploring on my own, and I was overwhelmed because I was having trouble finding stuff to do, and we had essentially these gift cards for this place that we needed to spend fast, otherwise we would lose that money because, they're already on the cards. It was just one of those dreams where I was always just on the move trying to find something, and early on, I had been carrying all my stuff around with me, like this huge bag of clothes. So I ended up stumbling across this elevator that had access to all 13 floors, and I was curious. I wanted to explore. I'm not even sure that someone like me was even allowed, even supposed to be accessing these elevators, or even know that they're there. With me just going around exploring the building, I just kind of ended up stumbling across that. So it was a little bit out of the way where most people would find them. So I went down to level number 3 and found myself in a church room. It was like an actual, like, decent sized church. It's hard to remember every detail, and the sequence of how and when for everything at this point got really a little mixed together, pretty similar and repetitive. If I can remember right, this church was empty, nothing really going on, and at some point I lost my stuff, my bag of clothes, so my mission ended up being from trying to find something fun to do to just simply getting my clothes, all my stuff back, because I couldn't find them, which just trying to retrace my steps and find those, but I never did, which was really frustrating, which made it hard to enjoy stuff, enjoy being there. Especially knowing that I probably wouldn't find my stuff because I was in New York City, and so my stuff was probably long gone by then. So I went back to the elevator and went down to number 1, and I ended up finding a different church service. This was a different church. I think this one actually had people, so I think I stayed for a little bit. Then I ended up heading up to level 2 and ended up finding it taking me to yet another church. What is there? A different church on every floor? Like, apparently. Very different. I didn't notice anyone at first, but then I spotted a priest that was standing in the seats. I think we had a conversation, but I can't really remember. So I ended up going back to the elevator, and I wanted to go to the 13th floor, go to the very top, because that must be extra special. What's up there? And I got a bit nervous thinking about, how high this is, because this is like a tall New York building. Like, yeah, should be safe inside this elevator, but all the horror stories with elevators. So I couldn't help but think, well, what if this elevator fails and I fall all the way down? So I took the elevator to the 13th floor, but as I got to the top, because this was a dream, not everything's gonna make much sense. This elevator design was not realistic. I could hear and feel the bottom of the elevator give out, so I pressed my arms and my legs against the walls of the very, very top of the elevator, holding on with all my might as the elevator plummeted down, leaving me at the very top, struggling to hold myself up as there were no bars or ledges for anything to get a grip of. And it was this really tiny space. I think I immediately said, "Help me, God," and was somehow able to like grab my phone out of my pocket and was about to either call my sister or the police, even knowing that there was like no way I could barely hold on any longer. And then I believe suddenly the elevator came back up to me and I was able to get out. Dreams, right? So now being at the very top floor, instead of finding a church this time, I was taken to a somewhat long, gray, like serious office, business type hallway. And at the end of the hallway was a door, and suddenly it opened and a line of celebrities, like only celebrities, all these actors and actresses came out, all walking around past me, not really paying any attention to me. I assumed that they had assumed I was also one of them, that I was a famous person, that I wasn't out of place there, which of course I wasn't. And so this of course got me naturally like really curious. And so I followed them, and they were all walking into this big area, this arena, and I think maybe at least in some way it was trying to resemble a megachurch. Sorta, I'm not really sure. So it was basically like this big circular room with all this seating, and in the center were these tables, and it's hard to remember who all sat at these tables, if it was just random people, or if there were pastors there, or maybe just more celebrities. But in the center, in the middle table, was the Pope. If I remember right, I think he was signing things. So I started out at the top row of the seating, just kind of like crouching down between a couple people who were sitting down, trying to keep a low profile, as I wasn't even sure if I was even allowed in there, because like everyone else was like rich and famous. Some people there were probably just loaded with money and not necessarily famous for anything. But pretty quickly the people I was next to were a little weirded out that I wasn't in a seat, and they were like, aren't you gonna sit down somewhere? And I had thought for sure that like every seat of this place must be taken, but it turns out only the section, the area where I was at, was like completely loaded with people, but some sections around there were like actually quite empty. So I walked down closer to the front so I could see better and sat down. And then suddenly I realized that apparently I was only wearing my boxers, as, you know, I had lost my bag of clothes earlier. Remember, we're running on dream logic here, so don't think too deep into it. So then I was worried I would either get too much attention for that and not blend in, or just, get kicked out. But apparently it was fine. Although some girl sitting behind me made some kind of comment on my lack of clothes. And anyways, the next thing that happened, unfortunately, the details are kind of fuzzy, but I think then the Pope had said to pay attention to what's happening behind him, and then something big came out of the right side of the stage ceiling behind him, because I think there was a stage behind him. I think it was a UFO, and I'm really surprised I can't really remember if that's for sure what it was. Whatever it was, I think I remember it being like big and unsettling, even like terrifying, but everyone there stayed pretty calm. I don't know why I think this, but it may have even been like a dinosaur, or perhaps Godzilla, which would match the theme that I had from the other night for whatever reason. So by that point, I had pretty much went to at least most of the different levels, and they all just had a different church on each level. It was very strange, and some of the churches felt like very safe, warm churches that you could feel comfortable at, that they were like probably pretty sound preaching. And even the one church I stumbled across, I had even seen my friend there from church camp. He's a pretty nice guy, and apparently, according to this dream, he was a regular churchgoer there. But then some churches on certain levels were like a lot closer to cults. Like the celebrity thing screamed of being a cult. It's very bizarre. So then a little bit later, I ended up being at this shop in a different part of the building. Not much happened there. I was just once again trying to find something to spend my money on so I didn't lose it, but couldn't find anything. So I kept walking around and found myself in this room with women who weren't dressed very modest, like in these like pink feathered like 1920s dancer kind of outfits. It was like they were playing some sort of weird game where you had to like open different doors, and like some of the doors they would be behind or something. I really don't get it, but I felt awful being there. I felt uncomfortable, like just didn't seem very appropriate, whatever it was, and I was trying to leave, but it was really unclear and confusing where the exit door was, because all the doors I was trying were like part of their game. I opened one door, and randomly I found my brother-in-law. For some reason he was in there, and he was like, come on, let's get out of here. And he opened up a door over on the side, and it took us right outside, and we were suddenly in a New York City alley, basically. So apparently that room had been on the ground floor. So nearby he took me to this little table, this little sitting area where my sister and my friend from church camp were both there, maybe like eating pizza, just relaxing, hanging out. So I mentioned to my friend that I had seen you earlier at church, and, he's like, oh, yeah, yeah. That's pretty much all the details I can remember from it. So very strange, don't know what most or pretty much any of that means. And I was debating whether or not I should talk about it, but the more I thought about how, like, well, the Pope and the church and all the churches and some being like cult-like and the celebrities, all of that kind of stuff, it's like, there's gotta be something there. Something like that is just screaming for, like, that to make some sort of sense. Like, that had to have been in my dream for a reason, right? So anyways, that was today's dream. I've been having a lot of dreams lately, a lot more than normal. I think Jesus is coming soon. I think it's going to be this year. No promises, but yeah, God bless you guys. Peace.